Loom large over this meeting. The U.S. has previously funded rebel factions fighting Syria's government and provided support to alliance forces fighting ISIS. So there is a lot at stake. And joining me live from Portland, Oregon is Peter Bechtold. He's the former director of Near East and North Africa Studies at the U.S. Department of State's Foreign Service Institute. Of course, the U.S., along with Turkey, some Arab countries, and Europe, all part of this coalition backing rebel forces. Why aren't they included in these talks, do you think?
Well, the United States government has put itself in the offside position, to quote former Prime Minister Tony Blair. We're not a party to the conflict. The American military in Syria is technically there illegally. They were not invited by either the Syrian government or the United Nations Security Council. There's interference in my earpiece.
Well, Peter, let me ask you this. U.S. President Donald Trump, back in December of 2018, announced the pullout of U.S. troops from Syria, saying the U.S. had accomplished its mission of defeating the Islamic State. We have this recent reporting, though, that Jim Mattis told Trump when he was resigning as defense secretary that Trump would have to let the next defense secretary lose to ISIS. I'm not going to do it, he said. Now, given the continued fighting, was Trump premature with his announcement, do you think?
Well, in a way he was, in a way he wasn't. The Islamic State is more of an idea than it is a number of individuals with guns in certain locations. I think this is very, very important. The Islamic State came about, and I talked to you on your program 5 years ago in 2014 as a response to what happened to the Sunni Muslims in Iraq, and then later was joined by the Sunni Muslims in Syria. That became ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and in Syria. And they were coming together because they felt oppressed by Shiite governments, the new Shiite government in Iraq, and the Alawite government of President Assad in Syria. And this is a very important part. Now, those forces have been reduced dramatically, especially when they were joined by Central Asian fighters and others who were sympathetic to the idea of having a new Islamic State because it might be stronger than the previous secular governments. The fundamental background is that the majority of Syrians are Sunni Muslims. And they've been ruled by an offshoot of Shia Muslims called the Alawites. They're about 13% of the population, and they live in the area right next to Idlib. I've been in Idlib. I know the geography quite well. There are mountains on both sides of the provincial capital. One side, the Syrians told me, is where the Alawites live. On the other side live the Muslims. So that's a Sunni view that the Alawites, who've been in charge, are not really Muslims. So one of the dimensions of the conflict over Idlib and over Syria is secularism that the Ba'ath Party used to follow, and the family rule of the Assads, versus the Sunni majority who made up almost a complete opposition in the Syrian civil war. And this is why Turkey has an interest in the Sunni Muslims. Iran has an interest in the Alawite government. And the new government of Iraq, also being Shiite, has an interest in backing the fellow Shiites in Syria. So this is why it becomes so complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of dynamics in play. We've got about 20 seconds. Michal Bardavid saying that they are hoping to make progress in the talks. What do you think the chances are of that, briefly, if you can?
Well, I think there's a good chance that Iran and Turkey will continue their economic cooperation. Russia has a major stake now in that part. And the U.S. government has chosen to be absent. A lot of this has to do with the personality of Donald Trump, but it's a process that has been going on for some time.
Peter Bechtold joining us from Portland, Oregon. Thanks so much for your analysis.